Okay, so I want you to picture something for a moment. You're sitting right next to a window. Maybe it's in your bedroom, maybe a train car. And outside, the weather is just miserable. A relentless gray downpour. You're watching the rain on the glass, you see the cars go by, the world is moving, time is physically marching forward. But inside your own head, you are completely frozen.
That's a haunting image.
It is, isn't it? It's that feeling of being stuck in amber while the rest of the world just rushes on by. Have you ever felt that disconnect? The sense that you're anchored to one feeling you just can't shake?
Oh, absolutely. That contrast, the external motion versus the internal, spaces. It's a very common description of depression or unprocessed grief. But for some people, it's not just a mood. It becomes the defining characteristic of their entire life. They're just stuck.
Exactly. And that feeling, that paralysis, is the heartbeat of what we're diving into today. We're looking at the lyrics to the song If I Don't Stay Sober by the artist Problematic. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. A song review.
Right. I came here to learn, not hear about music. But stick with us.
Please do.
This really isn't a music review. We're not going to talk about the beat or the mixing. We're treating this text as a raw first-person narrative, a case study, really. It's a brutal, honest look at the mechanics of trauma, the cycle of addiction, and this almost mythical concept we call closure.
Right. Our mission is to unpack the story buried in these verses. We have a narrator who is dealing with some incredibly heavy stuff, and he's weirdly articulate about his own dysfunction. So we're going to map out the specific traumatic events, his very complex relationship with sobriety, and this paradox of finding strength in being an outcast.
What's so fascinating to me about this text is that it doesn't just present addiction as, bad behavior. It presents it as a mechanism for survival, like a support beam in a house that's falling down. So if you're ready, let's get into the mindset of this narrator.
Let's do it. Okay, so we have to start at the root causes. Usually when someone is struggling like this, there's a trigger, a moment where the timeline splits into before and after. And in this text, it is so specific. The line just hits you. Joey passed away. I ain't never been the same since.
That is the line. That's the demarcation. We don't know who Joey is, a brother or friend, but the psychological weight of that line is just massive. Ain't never been the same since. This points directly to what psychologists call complicated grief.
Complicated grief. How's that different from just regular grieving?
Well, normal grief, as awful as it is, eventually sort of integrates into your life. You accept the loss and you move forward. Complicated grief is like a wound that just will not scab over. It keeps bleeding. The narrator is telling us his entire personality, his worldview, it all shifted the day Joey died. He is frozen in that moment.
And it's not just that one loss, is it? As you keep reading, the text layers on these other foundational cracks in his life. We get a glimpse into a family dynamic that, frankly, sounds terrifying. He says, closure while my dad left, and then immediately follows with, told me I'll try hitting harder than my stepdad.
Okay, let's pause there because that combination is just devastating for a developing brain. You have two very distinct types of trauma happening at once. First, the abandonment. Dad left.
Which creates a void,
right? Exactly, a deficit of safety. But then that void is filled by the stepfather. And notice the phrasing, hitting harder. This isn't just discipline. This is active physical abuse. So you have the biological father who didn't care enough to stay and a stepfather who cared enough to actively hurt you.
Yeah, it's physically painful just to read. It's a home life that was basically a war zone. The absence of love on one side and the presence of violence on the other.
Precisely. And if we connect this to how trauma shapes a personality, look at what he says next. He says, there's a part of me that's incomplete and that validation's what I seek.
That line really stood out to me. Validation's what I seek. It feels almost childish. I mean, he's a grown man. Why is he still hunting for validation?
Because he never got the baseline. This is a classic example of an external validation loop. When you grow up with abandonment and abuse, you start to think that any intense reaction, even a negative one, is a form of care. You feel invisible otherwise. So he feels incomplete because the people who were supposed to build his foundation either, left the job site or took a sledgehammer to it.
That makes so much sense. He's looking for something, anything, to fill that gap. But then the text turns to how he handles it. He says, running from my problems is the only way to deal with everything I feel. Which is honest. I mean, who hasn't felt that?
Of course, the flight response is natural. But look at the logic he uses next. It's completely twisted.
Yeah, he says, karma gonna find you if you do decide to face it. Wait a second. Isn't karma supposed to get you if you don't face things? Why would it punish him for facing his problems?
That's a critical inversion, isn't it? He sees confronting his past not as healing, but as a punishment. He's terrified that if he stops running, if he actually turns around and looks at Joey and the stepdad and the abandonment, that the emotional flood will just destroy him.
So running isn't just a choice. In his mind, it's the only thing keeping him alive.
Correct. Even though he admits running will never fix shit, he still sees it as the only way to deal. It's a survival strategy that he knows is flawed, but it's the only one he has.
Which leads us right into the mechanism of that running. How he escapes. We get this image of a tunnel and searching for peace inside. He wants to light it up, be on cloud nine. Pretty standard stuff, right?
On the surface, yes. He's desperate to feel something good or maybe just something numb to counteract the chaos. But listen to the resignation in what comes next.
The crash. He says, no amount of weed is going to take away the pain.
Huh.
That is such a stark realization to have while you're in the middle of it. You're doing the thing to fix the pain, knowing full well it won't fix the pain.
And that is the absolute definition of the addiction cycle. It's the law of diminishing returns. Maybe the first time it worked, maybe it numbed the grief over Joey for a bit, but now he's just chasing a ghost. And this creates this really dark psychological state, which he captures perfectly with. Dancing with the devil now, I'm starting to enjoy hell.
Oof. Starting to enjoy hell. That stopped me in my tracks. I mean, what does that even mean? How do you enjoy hell?
It speaks to the normalization of suffering. It's a form of adaptation, you know? When you live in trauma for that long, peace starts to feel foreign, maybe even suspicious. You get comfortable in the chaos. Dancing with the devil implies intimacy. He's not fighting his demons anymore. He's waltzing with them.
It's almost like a prisoner who falls in love with their cell because they've forgotten what the outside world even looks like.
In a way, yeah. If hell is the only home you've ever known, you eventually start to decorate the place. You get comfortable in the dysfunction because at least it's familiar.
Man. Okay, so we've got the trauma. We've got the escape mechanism that's become a trap. Now let's talk about his identity.